Understand, great all-around health starts by making sure greater access to healthcare is all around you. It's why Blue Cross is committed. Good evening. This is the June Chicago Computer Society Linux SIG meeting. Tonight we're going to have quite a few different odds and ends to go over. One of the things that I want to bring up myself is something that may or may not affect any of you folks, but it does affect me. It has to do with putting Linux on old laptops primarily, but it can occur to some extent the opposite direction on newer high-end machines, especially desktop type machines. What it is, I have 3 HP streams. They run Windows 8 to 10. The bad part about it is Windows is so bloated that it's a dog. You don't really want to use it. So I converted 2 of them already to Xubuntu. Xubuntu was going very slow itself. So that prompted me to start investigating and try and find out, why am I having such a laggard system with Xubuntu? So through my investigation, I discovered a oddity. That's the only way I can phrase it. In that the CPU of one of the units has a max normal clock speed of 1.6 gigahertz, which isn't a racehorse by any means, but it should run quite well. Well, it turns out you also have an idle speed, and the idle speed was at 500 megahertz. That's where the problem was at. Right now, I can't give you a solution. I have been playing with several different things, and so far I haven't found nirvana. But generally speaking, I want my minimum clock speed or idle speed to be 800 to 1,000 megahertz. And if I get that on a consistent basis, right now I can only get it on a temporary basis. It runs fine. Most people would be happy with it unless they're speed freaks that got to have every megahertz of speed out of their systems. So generally speaking, this is I guess you could call it an ongoing project that I'm going to be working on, trying to figure out if there's a way of changing that clock speed. One of the key factors that is normal, you cannot change most Intel CPU chip clock speeds. Only certain ones allow you to modify, usually through your BIOS and extra software, your clock speeds. And that's mostly for gamers. And I don't recommend overclocking, but at the same time too, the idle speed can be a problem. When you got newer machines, especially desktop units, the problem you may run into is your idle speed is so high, it causes your fans to be on almost all the time, whirring and making a noise that irritates you as the owner and user. So there, you would want to modify the idle speed down to a lower speed, which reduces the thermal condition of the CPU chip that's causing the fans to run at all time. So this is something that's in the works for me, and so I wanted to make mention of what I discovered in the last 2 weeks on my own equipment. I get people as I give them help and assistance, uh, sometimes their old equipment because they don't know what to do with it and they don't know how to get it recycled. So some of it I keep, some of it I recycle. The ones I keep give me as a tech hardware I can play with to learn some of the characteristics of some of the challenges these pieces of hardware are causing a lot of the consumers. And the biggest one is people buying computers, not knowing what they're buying. They just look at the price. The price is within their range of what they want to, maximum they want to spend. They buy it and really hope and pray it works for them. In some cases, they return the product because it's too low performance for them. Well, if they knew what they were buying to begin with, it's like buying a car. You usually scope out a car, you figure out the ones you're most interested in. You might take them for a test drive to see if they perform within acceptance for you. And the end result is you might find the one that you will be most satisfied with at a acceptable price range. People don't do that with computers. They expect them to do exactly what they want to do, the way they want it, and you find out that's not always the case. There's too many low-end, cheap computers. Yes, Bob. Premick, you're muted.
Tim, have you considered or are you capable of using on these devices a concept called CPU frequency scaling?
I've got so many of them that I'm playing with, it's pathetic, and they're all right now temporary.
Well, there's an article I put into chat which may or may not help you to get it to be more permanent, depending on your processor.
Yeah, I've been playing with this, like I say, off and on for a couple of weeks, and I can get it to temporarily give me frequency adjustment, but then the sucker, as soon as you reboot or power down, power back up, you're back to stock speed. Yes, Wayne.
Where do you see the this idle speed as compared to the
Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet.
okay.
You got there's only so much you can get in a limited amount of time. So now I've got to see if I can bring up my desktop over on this machine. And I'm going to bring that down for the time being. And we're going to expand that. And I am ticked off with those little boxes. Anyway. All right. Pardon me. That's my allergies reacting to the great air we're having to breathe. I'm trying to enlarge this screen. If you bring up a terminal in Linux, and this does not work on Windows, and I haven't even looked at Windows to see if the same thing uh, can be worked on there. But anyway, you type in a command, ls, oops, wrong keyboard. Boy, I keep doing this. I got 4 computers. Well, I still have 4 computers, but I logged out of one of them. LSCPU. You don't have to put in a space, but for clarity, I'm putting one in here. Then you want the pipe character. It's a straight vertical line, usually on the key above the enter key. You hold down the shift, hit that key, and you get that vertical bar. I'm going to put another space in. You don't have to put the spaces in. At least the 2 I put in so far. Then key in GREP space. And then that third space you do want. And then type in capital M as in Mary, H as in Henry, lowercase z for megahertz. Hit enter. And now it shows the maximum and the minimum speed of the current computer I'm on. It says I'm running a 3.8 gigahertz, and my minimum speed, which I call idle speed, is 1.6 gigahertz. Now on one of the streams that I've been losing my marbles and my hair with, it said the maximum was 1.6 gigahertz or 1600 megahertz, and the minimum was 499 or 500 megahertz. And that's too slow of a minimum speed because it creates such lag. But I'm going to also type in here LSCPU, U by itself. And this is the kind of information this sucker will put out. So the grep instructions, wrong one again. The grep instructions are filtering out everything that doesn't end with MHZ, and that's down here. So that's the same information, but it gives you a whole lot of other information here. Now, I also want to point out, this says 3.8, but over here it says the Intel Core i5 that I have in here is rated at 3.4. I haven't figured out that discrepancy, but if I'm right, if I figure out how to adjust the CPU frequencies high and low on a permanent basis, I have noticed that even on that one low-end machine that has a 1.6 gigabyte maximum frequency on CPU rating, shows a high speed of 2.5 gigahertz. So I'm thinking there the adjustment programs are able to adjust the high end up to that maximum. I don't recommend it because it's overclocking, and overclocking can overheat your CPU chip and possibly other components in your computer, shortening their lives. So this is something I'm trying to point out. I'm trying to correct in my low-end machines to make them more usable versus a doorstop or something to take to the recycling center. So this is what I'm working on at the moment. And it's an interesting conundrum, and there are number, at least 3 different ones that I'm playing with right now. I'm not sure if they're walking on top of one another or not, but my next step is, as soon as I get some free time, I'll probably take two of them out altogether and work with one at a time, trying to get things to work. I last year I mentioned for laptops, uh, to maximize your battery life, you need regulation running Linux. Linux is a battery vampire. That's the way I'm going to call it. In that, it will eat up your batteries faster than you can shake a stick at. Now, why do I say that? Because if you take a standard stock Windows PC, you load up any version of Linux on it, and disconnect your power supply with a healthy battery, you're going to find that you will have less than half the amount of time you had with Windows installed on it. And it could be as little as a quarter to 1/3 the amount of time. Now, if you can only get, say, roughly 4 hours on some laptops with Windows running, that means you could be as low as between 1 and 2 hours. So you have to use programs. I had two in mind that I brought up last year. One of them is called TPL. It's old, and there are three pieces you have to install, because normally it's command line and you have to have two of them. The third module is a graphical user interface to allow you to make adjustments. And I went over that last year. I'm pretty sure the video is up on YouTube. Uh, at any rate, there was another one that I was trying to get working at that time, would not work, called Auto CPU Freak. It is now functioning. So the bad part about it is insufficient documentation and no GUI interface for it, at least for the present. I'm sure at some point somebody's going to create a graphical user interface. I'm supposed to be able to set the minimum maximum frequency on it, but so far I haven't had good luck with it. I got to just keep playing with this thing. So at the moment, those are some of the things that I've been working on that. I also will be bringing up some additional things, but first I want to get something that Bob Premick came across that may be something that you may need to know about. Understand, most user groups try and focus on something like Mint, because it's a lot of people are going from a Windows environment to our Linux environment. The bad part is that it's if you do not use Linux Mint, or at least one other version of Linux that is good for beginners, it's hard to help people when they have problems. You're talking right now probably in the neighborhood of 600 active distributions. There's no group that can help 600 different versions out there all in one meeting. They can't even handle 4 in one meeting usually. So that's why you got to standardize on one, and then as you feel comfortable using Linux, you can start experimenting with other distributions, and that will then you'll start seeing some similarities as well as dissimilarities. Mint is based upon a great deal of the core of Unix, of Ubuntu. Sorry about that. And all they did was polish it, give it a new GUI interface called the desktop, called Cinnamon, and still support Mate and XFCE, which I have on one of my low-end computers. I need to adjust that clock on real bad. But it's one of these things that Bob thinks some of you could run into, because there are distros that are based on core Debian, core Ubuntu, and core Mint. And some of them will tell you what was the parent of their distribution, and some do not. Some of them, I'll say probably a good percentage of them are based on Ubuntu or Mint. But there are still quite a few out there on Debian. Mint itself has LMDE, which is Linux Mint Debian Edition. And they have also one of the few 32-bit as well as the 64-bit versions that are kept up to date. So you can have but it only comes in Cinnamon desktop. If you want a different desktop, you have to find out how to load in your own different desktop, and then you can use that different desktop all the time. But that will take up more space on your drive. So if you have too little space on your system, you might have a problem. Okay, I'm gonna Wayne, you had your hand up for a minute there. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I think what you were doing this is the command line on a Windows machine,
No,
right?
that's
Oh,
a
this was
command line right on Linux Mint.
Linux. Oh,
Trust me,
okay.
that
That,
command that I gave you can only work in a Linux environment.
okay.
Windows, the only way it would run it is if you have WSL loaded up, whether you have a graphical interface or not. It has command line presence. You could, on a Windows system with WSL loaded in your system, run that same command, and it would tell you what the clock frequencies are on a Windows based 10 or 11 system.
Okay.
I'm serious when I say that.
But this was strictly on your Linux machine though.
That's right. And
Okay.
the machines I'm trying to convert
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
going from Windows to Linux.
Okay.
But like I say, if you can get 10 to load up the WSL version 2, you can run that same command, and it'll give you that frequency information. Okay, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I would like to show something. I'm going to go over to my other computer to do this. I Tim, you showed very nicely how in the command line you can see all these nice things about how your CPU is doing and various parameters. There are in Linux, just as there are in Windows, some widgets that are available. And I'm going to go over to my Ubuntu where I have one of them installed. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let me know if my sound cuts out because I am putting a little strain on my cord. Okay, I'm gonna kill my browser for a minute and push you guys over. Do you see this thing stringing down the right-hand side?
Yep.
That is a widget called G Krellem, and it is based on GNOME, and it has these little windows which are called Krells, and each one of them is a core in my CPU. In fact, it's a hyperthread in my CPU, and I can see visually what the load is. But there's also a setting where you can see the frequency. So in the configuration, I could just as easily set this so that these peaks and valleys would indicate the frequency that it's doing. And I would also be able to tell whether one of my cores is parking, whether it's idling, and all these other nice and wonderful things. The other thing I'd like to do is point people toward chat, where there's an article that's uh, aimed at Arch users that shows 4 different ways to make permanent CPU frequency scaling. And that's exactly what Tim is trying to do. He's trying to scale the
Right.
CPU frequency and put it within a certain range, certain parameters. Okay, now I am going to go back over to Mint so that I can start you off on what I'm going to be talking about, which is dark mode.
Bob,
Yeah,
what's the name of that widget?
G Krellem, capital G, capital K, lowercase RELL, uppercase M, G Krellem.
You're only,
And
uh, uh,
G Krellem will work in Mint. It will work in the GNOME environment. It will work in Unity.
Bob,
Yeah.
just to mention, you're only the third person I've seen run this. The other 2 I've seen run this are usually part of the Linux workshop with APCUG.
Yeah. I like graphical things. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah,
I don't go for command line. I mean, command line will show you the running numbers, and you can actually see the numbers. And if you know you're looking for a 2 or a 3 or a 2.5, then you'll know whether you're within the parameters. But you can also do that using a graphical widget such as gchrome. Windows has widgets like this too.
yes. But most of the widgets are, in my opinion, an excess, and it depends upon the system you are running on as to whether you've got enough processor, memory, storage, speed in your system to justify them. The lower end you go on that hardware, the more you are not going to want to run those.
Well,
Because,
in low end hardware, you might want to do the command line.
right, and it's just a case where you've got to understand when you start using the widgets, what they are doing is taking some of your memory, some of your CPU processing speed and performance,
Yep.
and there is a little tiny bit on storage, especially if it has to use, i.e., the page slash swap file. And those slow down your system as is. So in most instances with Linux, you use the swap file very, very little. And that's
Right.
a good thing. That gives them more performance than Windows. Windows uses the page file, which is the same thing, for nearly half of everything it loads into memory. Therefore, you're constantly using the page file in and out chunks of code in memory
Yeah.
as you need them. And
I
that's a pain.
Okay, Tim, all valid points. However, I have just recently taken my Chromebook, which stopped receiving Chrome updates,
Mm-hmm.
took out the write protect screw,
Right.
swapped in a fresh battery,
Mm-hmm.
and it now runs Xubuntu.
Right.
The specs on this thing is it's a Skylake Intel processor, Core M3, which is really just a little bit above a Celeron.
Yeah.
It's a mobile processor.
Yes.
And it has 4 gig of RAM, and not spectacular specs. And I'm running G-Chrome on it, and it's perfectly comfortable with it.
The only thing there, I've got Chromebooks also that have been converted to Linux, and they run quite well too. But they're thoroughbreds compared to some of the low-end machines that I'm playing with right now, uh, because they're laggards with the CPU speed scaling.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, understood, Tim. At the really low end that you're doing, you're limited to command line.
that's right. And these are mostly Celeron based 2-core CPUs
Yeah, yeah.
and
But
no hyperscaler.
at least you can get some kind of Linux running on them, and it runs pretty well. Even if sometimes Xubuntu can be a dog, I think that's because some elements of XFCE actually aren't all that lightweight on certain processors. And if the processor, like you say, has an idle state where it drops down, you may want to look into that article I posted in chat. There are about 4 different ways you can specify within your system area what the parameters are for the CPU so it won't drop down.
Okay. Well, I didn't.
I'm not sure these will work for you, but it's presented and they say it works under Arch. I don't know whether it'll work for Xubuntu.
Well, I mean, I do have some Arch too, but I'm not running Arch on those low ends
No,
offhand. Uh, for those who are not aware, uh, Arch is classified bleeding edge Linux. They are always using the newest, latest, greatest versions of software out there to run in an Arch environment. And compared to a Debian based system, most arches are very arcane in
yes.
updating the software.
Yeah, there are some, it's considered a very advanced Linux. I would not recommend it for beginners.
Oh no,
Okay,
you have to be a person first. You got to get well versed in Debian versions of Linux first. Period.
right,
And you'll
right.
need at least a couple years experience. Then
Okay,
you can try RPM based like Red Hat, Fedora,
yeah,
OpenSUSE, Gecko,
yeah,
which is a polished version of OpenSUSE,
yeah.
before you
I
ever
I
think
have
about Arch.
I have played a little bit with Fedora, and Fedora for me is not that much more difficult than Ubuntu. It's a little more difficult, but not that much.
Well,
I
the
anyway, I not to take away from this topic being important about CPU frequencies, what I was going to move on to
go ahead.
is something much simpler for people, much easier. I'm going to stop sharing here for now.
Bob, excuse me. This
Yeah.
is the other Bob.
Yeah.
Uh,
I didn't get my hand up. I didn't want to interrupt your conversation there. I
uh,
couldn't see the little things that you were showing. I just had black boxes on the screen.
oh,
So I don't know if it's something I'm doing wrong or
let
I
me
It
said
was
see
proceed
if
with
between
Bob.
the black boxes what he was
let
showing.
me show you what I was talking about. Does that share it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what I'm talking about. That's G-Chrome. Okay? And it's
Okay,
running
thank you.
live on my other machine now. It's running live on my Intel NUC. And right now, things are idling pretty much because it doesn't have anything like a browser share or anything like that. It's just sharing the G-Chrome itself. And you'll notice there was a huge drop down in the amount of load on the CPU.
Oh yeah.
So
Like I said,
it,
even on my low end computers, if I get one of the CPU scaling programs running in the current session, I can
yep.
get good performance and show good speeds. But as soon as I do a reboot, I'm back into the old low end performance.
Let me see whether or not I closed my browser here. No, the browser hadn't been closed, but I think
It's
I'm going to
I
stop this share and I'm going to start a new share of my whole screen. And I think you're going to see, if you could see it, that the G Chrome,
Just
first
barely
of
see it.
all, let me get my browser down. This thing on the right,
Yeah,
it just jumped up
right.
because now I'm sharing my browser. And that browser is Chrome. And when Chrome is not being shared, its tabs can go idle, and I have it set so that it will. And so when Chrome is idling, it's very low use of the CPU. When it's active, it jumps up. But anyway, this is all nice, all well and good, but it's not what I want to show folks. What I want to show folks is on, I'm going to start out on Mint so that we can see. Let me get you guys.
Yeah, these blocks are
Have I got everything out of the way?
that share at the top. If you
Yeah.
grab the real top stuff, you can slide it to one side or the other.
Let me see whether I can do that. I'm going to try to slide everything. This is
Yeah.
one of the.
You got
I'm not having any luck grabbing it or sliding it. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah. Okay. And that one there, that you hit, yeah, it slides over too. I don't know what that's in the middle.
Right in the middle. There it went. It's gone.
Okay. Bob, I'm have a feeling you are either muted or you pulled out your cord.
What I did was I closed my browser. Are we
Okay.
back?
Yep.
Okay, we're back. So, am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
And now you'll notice everything is in dark mode. So that's the concept of dark mode. And what I am going to try to do is, you see, the browser has to relaunch every time that I do this, so I may briefly lose contact. What I want to do is disable. All right, I don't know if default is going to do this. Okay, we're still with me, and we're
Yep.
back
Yes.
to, this is light mode again.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to show you something that can happen. Cinnamon is basically a light theme, or at least the cinnamon I've got is light mode. It is not a dark mode theme. There are themes that are by default dark mode. And in Cinnamon, you do not have the thing called dconf editor or any of these other things. They tend to be GNOME centric. And Cinnamon is different from GNOME. Unity is different from GNOME, but it uses some GNOME elements. So that's why I can go over to here, and let's see if I can do my share of this screen again. And I'll push you guys over. You don't need to see my G Chrome any longer. So I'll push all of this over to that corner. And I'm going to do the same little trick of opening Chrome. Only this time, I am going to go into one of the Chrome. I'm going to go into Chrome settings because this is where you'll really see it. Right now, I am using a theme called Radiance, which is a light theme. The default theme for Ubuntu is Yaru, which is a dark theme. And I'm going to call up something called dconf editor, which will let me show you what kinds of issues can arise. Dconf editor you have to download and install. You do it like any normal kind of a program. It says I'll be careful, and there's a reason why it says this. You're getting into system areas here, and if you make one false move, you could have no graphics or you could have an unbootable system. So be careful. And I'm going to go up one level from here because this shows where I'm at. I'm in a spot called org.gnome.desktop.interface. How did I find out about this? I went online, looked up an article that said, help, I'm stuck in dark mode. What's the matter? Well, there is something that you can edit called color scheme. Now, the color scheme, if it were default here, it would not be this custom value. The value that is the default here is preferred dark. And that's true of Yaru. And it's true of some other themes. And I'm going to hit apply. And that puts me into dark mode. If I were to use default, see, I don't even have to reboot. I don't even have to restart the session to see the changes. Let's see what default wants to do. Apply. Default for Radiance is a light mode. For Yaru, default is a dark mode. And I don't like dark mode for several reasons. I'm usually in daylight, in a light colored room, not in the dark, not playing games, and I'm not on my phone. So I don't need dark mode for all the things that it's good for. Dark mode is also a nice one for when you're about to go to bed,
Yeah.
so that you do not have the screen burn in that you get from a light screen. But there are some sites which, when they're in dark mode, I find them almost unreadable.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, I do not want to be stuck in this prefer dark. Because if I go to a site like, let me go to Reddit. That's Reddit in dark mode. I'm going to block notifications. That's Reddit in dark mode. Now, let me get into my dconf editor and throw it into prefer light. And hit the apply. There we are. Now, I find this more readable in daylight. At night, I would want it the other way. And so this is an easy way to switch if your theme is trying to force dark mode on you, and if you have the ability to do dconf editor. Now, if you're using Wayland, you're going to have to use a GNOME shell extension, and that's beyond the scope of what I'm doing. But there are different ways of doing things, and you can switch your theme to a light colored theme. You can switch the settings within your theme if you know how. And there are command line ways of doing it, but one typo in the command line and you're also going to mess things up. So that's why in this case I like the GUI that is available for dconf editor, because it shows me graphically, or at least with buttons, what I'm doing. I don't have to type, and there's no danger I'm going to type something fatal into the command line. So I am going to stop sharing now because I think I've pretty well made my point.
Okay, I think that's a good point, but I want to add to what you brought up there, but wasn't really part of your presentation.
Yeah?
When you take into account last month's meeting, I brought up about browsers. They're cross-platform. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter whether you're on Windows, Mac, or a Linux operating system.
Mm-hmm.
The key is he was using that dark mode under flags. And usually what it is, you type in Chrome ://flags, and then there's plethora of flags out there. It's all experimental beta stuff that may work and may not work. I've had good success with it. It'll work on Chromium based also. Chromium is the foundation of Chrome, so they'll work there. That also includes Edge, but with Edge, instead of saying Chrome colon, you say Edge colon / flags.
Oh, so Edge has flags too.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think the same thing exists in Firefox, or at least it used to.
No, Firefox is about config.
Mm,
Firefox has an about config.
and I think it had flags at one time, but they probably took it out.
Yeah, it's config now. There are config items.
Yeah.
I can share with you how Firefox handles this. Firefox still does what Chrome used to do. It still has an internal theme that doesn't respect your system theme. And that can go either light or dark. And since I have Firefox here, why don't I share it and just show you the difference? If I do Firefox like that, just a second while I widen him out, let me go into the settings. And in Firefox, there should be an appearance settings, unless they have changed where that's at.
I think it's under.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
Language and appearance. You can make it into a dark theme.
Yeah.
You can make it into a light theme. Automatic. Now, if it's automatic, it will pick up your system theme. And that could be dark if it's Yaru. It could be light if it's Radiance. And it is light if it's Cinnamon by default, although there is a dark Cinnamon as well. So if I really wanted Firefox to be dark themed, there it is.
Yeah.
And you used to be able to do the same thing in Chrome or Chromium, but they changed that in version 1.14 so that that's no longer the way you do it. And so now, at least in my Ubuntu, I use dconf editor. In Cinnamon, Mint, it doesn't seem to matter, and it doesn't seem to matter very much in Xubuntu, which is using XFCE. That also seems to stay light, at least with the theme setup that I have. Your mileage may differ. Okay, that's it.
Oh, what do you mean that's it? We're not.
That's all I got.
We're not done yet. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention last month, I was bringing up about extensions, and I covered Chromium based quite well. But on Firefox, there were two that I didn't mention, and if I can get this sucker to come up, come on, launch. Oh boy. Okay. Now let's see if I can move some of this around. Boy, that took a long time. Well, it's good enough at the moment. Um, Two of the extensions I told you about on Chromium based system, uh, they had one called Session Buddy that gives you the ability to save what windows and tabs you have open. That's very important for me as a researcher. And at the same time, too, I also had in Chromium-based browsers the magnificent suspender, which used to be the great suspender. Do not mess with it. Google will complain about it if you try and use the great suspender. But in Firefox, you don't have those two. And I finally found two that seemed to work for me. And what they are this one here. This is in Firefox called Session Boss. It's the closest thing I found to Session Buddy in Chrome-based browsers. And it gives you the ability to save things and kind of clean the slate and be able to restore what you saved. And if you accidentally delete what you got by not having it set to remember and resume where you left off in the browser settings, this is one way of getting it back. So Session Boss for Firefox is as close as I've been able to come to a good tool like I have in Chrome for years. Now the other one that this one was a kind of a toss-up. I had two that I've been playing with, and I think I finally settled on this one here. And this one's called Auto Tab Discard. It gives me some of the flexibility I have with the marvelous suspender in Chromium-based browsers. So I can suspend the tab I currently have open. I can discard the content of a group of tabs if I'm using the group tab feature. I can say everything but the current tab in this window that is an open tab, meaning it has its content on display. It will close them out, and all it does is it keeps the tab, keeps your URL, but it blanks out the content of the web page until you click on that tab. So there are some additional features here. I find this one to be better. There's another one called Tab Discard. That's instead of Auto Tab Discard. And that one, it kind of works, but I don't have this finite control. It wants you click on it, it doesn't give you any options, and it tries to close out all the tabs you don't have open at the time. So this one here gives me the control that I want, that I'm used to in a Chrome-based browser. So I thought I'd bring this to your attentions now that I've settled on two new ones in my Firefox. So I hope you found that to be a good piece of information. The next one I want to play with is a two-parter. It's know your hardware and control. Pardon me. All right. For this one, I'm going to minimize that. Anyway, I'm going to bring up Software Manager in my Mint, assuming we got enough resources. Oh. Here, that'll give me a little bit back. All right, the first tool that I got that I'm going to mention is called CPU-X. Some people don't accept hyphen. It's a dash, the minus sign, if you will. Come on. Okay. Here it is here in the center. And if I click on it, I can do an install. But if I remember right, I think I already have it. Hang on a minute. We'll find out right now. It's a command line tool, so you have to launch it from a terminal.
Tim, are you sharing the screen now?
It should be shared. Did you see the,
I don't see it.
all
No.
right, hang loose. You know what? I accidentally got out of Zoom. That's why you don't see it.
That's what happens to me when I close a browser completely.
Well, I only closed Firefox. I didn't close this one here. So why it did it, I don't know. Yeah, don't. Now you can't see what I got here. Zoom quit unexpectedly. Send a report to Zoom. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it crashed.
Yeah.
That's different. What I did accidentally during my little presentation was I did close the browser. Briefly, I got kicked out of Zoom, but the browser restored because Chrome can do that.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Hang loose for just a second here while I lose my marbles.
Besides, if we don't have three of you, Tim, we have about half as many participants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back here. This is the software manager. I had put in CPU X. This is what came up. I clicked on it. It says I can install, but I got to double check because on one system I have this already installed. So I'm back here on the terminal, and no, I did not install it on this machine. I think I saved it for tonight's meeting. On a different machine, I have it installed. And it's going to say I have to have these additional dependencies.
Yeah.
Click continue, put in your administrative password.
Yeah.
Wayne, did I hear you? Anyway,
Pardon?
did I hear you? I thought I heard somebody's voice while I was looking at the screen.
Yeah, when we're not asking questions, it's a good idea to mute.
Okay. Now I've got it here. I can launch it from here, but that's inconvenient. So I go back to the terminal and I'm gonna up arrow and press enter again. Now do you see what's in the middle of the screen? I get this kind of stuff with CPU-Z on a Windows system. This gives you a lot of information. I'm sorry about the small size, but I don't think I can do anything about that. But it gives you CPU information, your the status of your caches and their sizes, your motherboard basic information. You can get more by clicking on various hyperlinks in here. More about your system, especially this one down here. This details the total amount of memory in your system and how it's being used by your applications, your buffers, your caches, and this is a free space in memory. And if I was using the swap file, it would show you how much it's using of the swap file. It also has a tab here about your graphics. These are things that when you need help, quite often a techie person will ask about. And this gives you one source of information. There's also a benchmark. Benchmark to me is more for the people who insist upon maximizing any and all performance out of their system, particularly the CPU, like gamers do. So it's an interesting piece of software. There's a second one that I want to show you. We got critical failed. Failed to retrieve the voltage. Don't know why it did, but at any rate, I'm going to come back down here to here, and I'm going to change the search value to HARDINFO. This one I like a little bit better. It gives me some of the characteristics of utilities I've been using for decades in Windows. And especially for Windows people I have to help out. Trust me, knowing some of the hardware features can answer a lot of questions. Come on. I'm saturating with all the devices. There's only one. That's the one I got installed. Okay, because it has a little green circle with a check mark. That means I've already got that installed. So I come back over here to the terminal. Oops. Come on. Do what I want, not what you want. All right. And I'm going to key in at the bottom, hard, INFO. And this gives me, I know what I'm sharing. Knock it off. There we go. And this is a summary right here. I've got an operating system, Linux Mint 21.1. The CPU happens to be on this machine, a Core i5, third generation CPU with a max clock of 3.4 gigahertz, and it's a single core processor. I mean, a single socket processor versus a motherboard that handles two CPUs. It has two cores, but only two threads. That means it doesn't have hyper threading. There's only one thread per CPU instead of two. I have 8 gigs in the machine, and this gives you the idea of the motherboard, graphics. Storage is solid state. Printer, it recognizes a couple of my printers, only a couple. There's 2 others that are should be recognized but are not, and one that is not hooked up. But I can go in here to the summary, type only information that gives you a little more detail about your hardware. It gives operating system specifications, kernel modules. This tells you exactly what your kernel has capabilities built in versus having to recompile a kernel from source code that you can download and adding modules that you need for your particular system. This gives you the boots that have been done on this system for a while. Languages, if you want that. File systems, it tells you by the major categories how much space is being taken up by each individual area. displays your environmental variables, which is kind of like auto exec back and config sys in old Windows environments. Development, I've never really figured out all they're trying to do here, but I'm assuming here this is the pieces of software currently in the system that you may have available if you do your own programming. Users, these are various user daemons, etc. And there's really only one user on here. What groups are available, and their IDs. Then you get into devices. This is more fine-grained information about your hardware. It gets into network and into benchmarks. So I don't think I generally don't mess with benchmarks. It's not my thing. But if I'm having certain issues, I might need to know, oh, I've got a 2-core processor, no hyper-threading. Otherwise, it would show 4 here. The memory, this is giving me information about my memory. And the reason for some of the slow response is what's showing up on the graph. It's saying I'm using about 90% of my physical memory. PCI devices, this in particular can be important if you're using M.2 drives in your computer. They run on the PCI bus. USB devices, these are what's available in my system. Printers, battery, no battery found. That's true. It's a desktop unit. If it said it had a battery, I would have been a little bit disturbed. Sensors, it gives you all the sensors that are built in and what the temperatures are running. And based upon what is showing on this graph down at the bottom, I don't know if that's for the temperatures or not. If it is, it's would indicate it's kind of hot, but I don't think that's all that accurate because these temperatures don't look that bad. Input devices, storage again, DMI information. Now, memory SPD, I never looked it up before. I wasn't concerned about it, but it's to do with the EEPROM on your motherboard that holds your UEFI/BIOS. And other resources, IO ports, etc., and what's going on there. You get into the network, etc. So these are two, I think, cool tools to help anybody figure out what their hardware is so that when they are doing their own stuff or they are trying to help somebody else out, these are tools that can be used to aid in understanding the environment of the machine you're trying to help out on. Okay, any questions so far? Gee, that means you all knew and understood everything I said. Now you can explain it to me. Anyway, the next thing I want to show you, I only came across, maybe a little over a month ago. And I've been playing with it. I'm going to do a clear screen. So I'm going to key in clear. There we go. And drop that just to here. Now, a lot of you and it's very understandable, want to use the graphical interface for updating the system. Now on Mint, this is the tool that comes up. Come on. It says I happen to have at least one update. And I left it here intentionally. I'm not going to use this updater. So I'm going to close that off. Another thing is command line. And I've brought this up in the past. It's good for you to know this command line environment, because sometimes things don't go as expected in our systems, and you may be relegated to some extent to have to use a terminal. So normally we would key in sudo apt, and then the next word we would normally put in is update. This updates what new things are out on the internet. And then I would do a sudo apt upgrade, and it would then compare that new database of available updated software with what I have installed on my system. And at that point, it would then say the following are out of date. Do you want me to go ahead and update? And usually you would just say yes, and it goes and does its thing. I found a new tool, and the new tool, oops, lost focus. I dropped my mouse, so it lost the focus off of the terminal. So I'm going to back up here. I'm going to put in a different word instead of APT, called NALA. I'm guessing it's Nala. I don't know how to announce it in any other way. But I'm going to back that up and just put Nala without sudo. Why? Because it's going to tell me information about it. I'm on version 1.216-1 of the version. I have seen the version numbers, 3 of them so far. Normally when you install Nala from the software manager, you'll probably get version 0.11.1. I have also seen 0.12 and I don't remember if it was a 1 or a 2. I also found out there and have downloaded on at least one machine version 0.13.0, and all of them seem to do basically the same thing. So I'm going to key in, I'm going to up arrow first to get Nala. I'm going to put a -H after it. Oops. Some of them work with the H, and some of them are nuts. All right. I'm not getting what I'm looking for, but what it amounts to, I'm going to put in clear again. I'm going to put in sudo NALA, and I'm going to put the word upgrade, UPGRADE. And if you remember, if you're not using the command line of sudo app update and sudo app upgrade and how it looks, trying to read it, watch what this one does. Just use one command, Nala upgrade. And by the way, Bob, if you're doing research, I've got articles on this available. I'm gonna key in the password. Oh, I guess I didn't install it on this one. Shame on me. I thought I had it on here. Okay. Well, we'll get it. Come on. Ah. Best laid plans of mice and men. Now, one thing, oh, shoot, got a typo in there. It'll never find it otherwise. Nala was originally designed for a Ubuntu environment, but since Mint is mostly Ubuntu, it works there. Any other Debian-based version that is derived from Ubuntu or Mint probably will be able to use Nala. I have not been able to get it to work on Debian-based distros. So like LMDE as an example will not use Nala. It just doesn't know how to deal with it. So I'm gonna do an install on Nala. It has a lot of dependencies. Oh boy. And again, this is command line. Nala is only command line. There's no graphical user interface. Okay. Got that. And we'll try this again. I'll up arrow, get the command again. It automatically does the equivalent of sudo app update. Then it automatically does the equivalent of sudo app upgrade if you say upgrade. And this is now asking me if I want to continue from this point forward. It has determined packages were kept back, and there's also Linux generic and header generic, Linux image generic. They may not be ready for prime time. I'm not sure all the reasons why they don't spell that out. They don't spell it out in the regular app command line. By the way, on the command line of sudo nala upgrade, as well as sudo app upgrade, update and upgrade, you can follow them with a -y to automatically answer yes to these, and it starts going through. Now, I gotta make one thing apparent as to what's happening. My experience so far with Nala is it probably does not support upgrading any snap packages or flat packages from my experience so far. That is something we'll probably get down the line because we're in the infancy. Most software is not classified production until it's at least version 1. And if we're playing with 0.11.1 to 0.13.0, we got a long ways to go to get version 1. So anything can happen. Bob, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Tim, with regard to held packages, that means that either there may be a conflict between something you have installed and what this would install, or that because it will change the version of something you have installed, it may break some of your existing software. That's why packages are held.
Okay. Well, being that they're all generic headers and stuff like that, odds are it's not going to be something you're going to notice. But right now, I told it go ahead. It's going to, it's installing really just one package, the Google. Um, it gives you a more graphical style interface of what it's doing. It makes it easier to read what is going on in this system. And my personal opinion is Nala should, in my opinion, replace our good old app application, but it's using the app application within the code of Nala. So you can't delete it as it were. Now let's see if I can get what I wanted in the first place, not realizing I didn't have it loaded up. Here we go. These are the various commands. If I put Nala space double hyphen version, I will see what the current version is. So let's look at that. Oops, wrong keyboard. And I'm on now, what it downloaded was 11.1. And I have in one instance 12. And I have upgraded one instance to 13. So, and then you got license, installation completion. That one I don't comprehend at the moment, but and show completion. I haven't had a need for that, but under commands, you have auto purge, auto remove, clean, fetch, history, install, list, purge, remove, scratch, show, update, upgrade. Upgrade includes update. If you really look at that line there, and I don't know how well you can see it on your screens, but right there you have, well, I'm using the wrong mouse too. Sorry about that. Right here at the last line, it's updating the package list with just the word upgrade, and it will do the system upgrade. So you don't have to do two commands. One command does both. And yet it gives you all the functionality of using a sudo app to auto purge, auto remove, clean, fetch, etc., remove, install, etc. Anything you can do with app, you can do with this. It's just a cleaner looking environment. I find myself at times on hold, so to speak, with regular app displays in the terminal, trying to read what it's saying to find out if I've got a problem, an issue, et cetera, et cetera. And this environment with NALA gives you a much cleaner way of viewing this information. So I'm hoping some of you will try it out. I also have in my information package the URL for this stuff. Hang on a minute here. Oops. Okay, I didn't get to that one yet. All right. Anyway, there's another thing that we're gonna try and play with tonight. We'll see how far we get. And I'm gonna come back to here. Now this is Edge, and purists don't like the fact that it's Edge, but Edge works damn good. I use Edge heavily in Windows environment, and so I'm comfortable with it, and I have an additional reason for doing it this way. So if I'm lucky, I will open this up, and I'm going to put there, let's see, darn it, Control V. Come on, open up, open sesame. Now you won't work. Oh, there it did work. Excuse me. It's just the system's a little bit taxed. I think I'm going to have to upgrade from 8 gigs to 16 gigs on this system. Come on. Right now, this thing's tied up trying to load up all those URLs, and I overloaded it. Wow, did I go overboard? Sorry about that, folks. Well, I know what I'm going to do. Come back here. That gives me back my resources. I'm spending everything that I was opening up there. I went overboard. I didn't notice that it actually was working. So this is the first one here, and it's everything you need to know about Nala on Ubuntu. The second one is it's a much cleaner, neater alternative to the app package manager, which is what I tried to present. Releases, this is the 1.3 version. This is the actual URL. I'll copy that and I'll stick it in the chat. I hope, if I can. I can spot chat. There's chat. Okay. Okay. Now this, I put in the chat the URL for this location here. What you do is you go down and see, you can see version 12s were out there too. And with this one here, I can, I don't want the source code. I want this line here that'll give evidence, but that I usually don't need. This is the one I want, the package. It's a .deb package. Download it, and then go to your download folder, right-click on it, open with gdeb, and it'll install the one, version 13 on top of whatever version you get, which is probably the 11.1. So I don't think you'll see that much of a difference between the two, but at least it's a live package. It's under development, so hopefully we can expect better things to come, and maybe one day we'll see a GUI package, whether this person creates it or somebody else creates a GUI wrapper that runs now and gives you a graphical presentation like we're used to. This is the next thing that I wanted to bring up. NormCap. Interesting little piece of GLP Linux software. It's an OCR program in a nutshell. Why do you want to consider this piece of software? I occasionally, because of my research, and I create the more FYI listings, have to have the text that's on top of a graphic image, and it will not copy. You cannot highlight it and copy it. But with NormCap on a Linux system, I can read the text and therefore transfer the text to the clipboard and then paste it into my document. That gives me a functionality I was lacking in the Linux distros until I came across this program. And I came across it because of my more FY postings. I posted 2 or 3 of them last week. I haven't gotten to the new one. I've got one ready to start creating the post, but it'll probably be Wednesday or Thursday before I get it done. So that's another little tidbit. Here's an interesting article too. How to use the zip command in Linux to compress files and folders. You don't always have available the graphical user interface, or it's not always as convenient, though I think most of the file managers in Linux do a fine job. This gives you another option available if something isn't working right, on how to use the zip command properly in Linux. And this is part of the reason why I'm using Microsoft Edge. It's got the reader view that I mentioned last month. So this is how you get it. You do an app install of zip, or you can use Synaptics. It might be in the software manager as well, etc. Then you come down, and as you can see from this sample of the command line, it's not something that most people may want to do, because there's lots of different portions of command that you need to put in, such as the switch -R, the switch -U, the switch -M. These all have specific functions. And then you're telling it the zip file that you're creating and what you're putting into the zip file. So it goes through trying to explain all of the characteristics. These are the switches that it's explaining. So we had a R, so it's recursively add files within the folder. We had a U, update the zip file by adding new files. And we had an M, move file into archive. That means that once it's done putting your file into the zip folder that you're creating, it's going to, it should end up deleting your original file. That gives you space back. So in a sense, zip tools are good for archiving bulky information, whether you're going to send them as an attachment on an email to somebody else, or just making space of stuff you want to keep, but you don't need ready access to it. Next. Okay. Now this is one that I'm not so sure we need, but I'm not ruling it out because this is for Linux. How to free up memory and improve RAM performance on Linux. And so I want to put this in reader mode. And by the way, the only two that I like is Edge and Firefox on reader mode. Chromium based ones and Chrome, I don't care for what you have to do with those. But why is RAM so important? Well, I've only got 8 gigs on the Linux machine, and it started getting pretty darn slow because of insufficient memory. Checking the RAM usage, terminating unused services and programs. That's one I want to eventually get into. Always use up-to-date software. To me, that's a duh to begin with. Use lightweight software wherever possible. I've got things that I'm going to mention on that as well. Adjust swappiness. This one's a little crazy in a sense. It may work and do a lot of improvements on your system by adjusting values used to control the swap system in your computer. Its normal swappiness might be on the slow side, and this gives you the ability to speed it up. So you have to read through the article. This is stuff that I will, I've got a file that I'll put out on the chat that you can download. Clearing the caches, etc. Rebooting the Linux PC, add more RAM like I need to. Optimize your RAM for maximum performance is the goal of the article. Next up, 7 best tools for creating a bootable USB drive from an ISO image in Linux. Generally, I've used Windows all the time to create my bootable drives because that's where I started everything off from. Generally though, two tools that I use are Rufus and Belanda Etcher. Belanda Etcher will work in Linux, but Rufus does not. It's a Windows only tool. So I'm bringing that to your attention right off the bat. The startup creator disk is another tool. And some of these are now showing up in the more modern versions of Linux. They have their own writers built in. Fedora Media Writer is another one. There's the Belenda Etcher. UNet Booten. That's an old one that I remember from way back, but I got away from it. I don't remember why. Ventoy, I have, and Bob has also the use of Ventoy. Do recommend it. An alternative is Yummy, and Yummy does kind of the same basic thing. It allows you to put on a flash drive multiple iOS images without installing them on a USB flash drive. And you can run the ISO image just as if you did flash it on a separate flash drive to bring up any Linux operating system. Another tool that I would recommend is Boot Repair. It works on Windows and Linux. And another tool is Popsicle and the Universal USB installer. Now, if I remember right, and I'm gonna come all the way down to the bottom. Okay, on this, whoops, there it is. Right near the top here in my start menu, in Linux Mint, you have USB image installer and USB stick formatter. This one here, I don't know if it'll work on an SD drive. SD drives have a tendency to get messed up, and you have to use a tool that I know works on Windows to allow you to reformat it and put it back to factory specifications. This might do it, but it's primarily for regular USB drives. That much I know. Next on the agenda, how to secure Linux systems effectively using a YubiKey. I don't know how many of you know what the heck a YubiKey is. I've been using one for years on some of my online accounts. And if, I don't know how well you guys can see it, bringing it up as close as I can get it. This is a YubiKey. It looks like nothing. There's no storage on it, but it's a USB Type A device. They now make Type C as well. I haven't gotten one. You set up in an online account two-factor authentication, and one of the options should be for a key, a security key. Sometimes they call it that versus a YubiKey. You plug this into a USB port, give it a couple seconds, and then there's a little dot there right in the middle of the blue field. A little blue light comes on with an image of a key. You tap your finger on it once, and the code goes from this device through the internet to that online account to validate you are the valid user. Now, any kind of security you have on any system, high-end hackers have ways of defeating it, but in general, if you keep them guessing how you're doing two-factor authentication, and I recommend that on your online accounts, especially for banking, financial institutions, any Gmail accounts you have, and ones like Amazon, eBay, PayPal. Can't think of the name of these apps that are available for paying electronically to another person. God, but you may be able to use keys on every one of those to give you added security. So YubiKey Authenticator I have used on some of my accounts, not all of my accounts. I use a mix of two-factor authentication. That keeps everybody guessing how I'm doing it. And if they figure out all my accounts, I'm dead in the water anyhow, so it doesn't matter much. There are authentication programs by Microsoft, by Google. I don't remember if there was one for Amazon or not, but and I'm not sure about Apple. But there may be other companies that have these authenticators, and what they are is an app that usually runs on your phone, but some of them will run on the computer. It will give you a number. It's only good for 30 seconds, so you got to start typing that number right away. And even if it changes the number, it will recognize the number you typed in, and it'll authenticate you as the person that has the right to access that account. So that's another one. Using either a phone call or a text SMS message to your phone are not good ways of getting a secure code. And the reason is it's too easy to spoof the numbers, the phone numbers. And bottom line is a lot of companies that were using the phone and or SMS text messages are changing how they're doing it now, because it's so easy to have the bad guys spoof your phone number once they get a hold of it. No, I don't have space in my lap for you. Talking to my cat, one of my cats. Okay, now here's one. This is not an article. This is an actual web page. This is I do remote help to people, and I've used quick access out of Windows. I've used TeamViewer and a couple other ones. AnyDesk I learned about via APCUG on Linux. It's cross-platform. It works on anything you got. And I like it a lot. And it gives me all these platforms I can install on. It's not bad. Now I'm going to bring it up if the system doesn't get too overloaded. There we go. And this is AnyDesk here. This is my control number. There's two ways you can do this. I can give the other person I'm trying to help my control number, or since I help out a lot of people, I ask them for their number when I get it installed on their system. And that way I can keep track down here of everybody's code. And I just have to click on this and it will go to that machine. And that happens to be my Windows 11 machine unsupported. So it's the one critical difference. A lot of these remote programs do not provide you the ability to have total control of the other person's machine. It usually requires that person to be there and to give administrative access rights to the computer. In this program, I can do a lot of features without needing that person to respond to a screen on the other end. This is something that if you were doing remote administration of a computer, like a server, as an example, would come in very handy because there is no person at the other end. And so this piece of software will give you a lot of control and responsibility. And I'm using it more and more, and stopping using a lot of the other pieces of software that I have traditionally used helping other people. And this one here may be at least some interest to some of you. Again, I'll go into reader mode. 7 tips to organize your files on Linux and declutter your PC. Trust me, there are counterparts on Mac and Windows as well. But give meaningful names to files. Always use file extensions. I didn't do that on one document for tonight's meeting, and I transferred it to a Windows machine, and Windows says, what do I do with this? And it was either use a text file or RTF file. Bob?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Linux does the old Unix thing where if it's a text extension, it doesn't use any extension.
Yes.
Windows doesn't know what this means.
Yes.
Also, there's a difference between Windows text and Unix text in the way the carriage returns are expressed.
That's correct. There are 2 types of, actually, I think 3 types, if I remember right, of text files. And it's confusing as hell. Sometimes what I would do here, and I haven't gotten to it yet, and I hope I got enough time. You know, we're about running out of time, but I'm about done with these articles. It gives you information how to set things up. I think this is the, no, that's the norm cap again. Okay, so I'm not worried about it. There's only 10 of these, but I've got additional articles you should look through. And let's see if I can find my file. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Makes doing a chat a hell of a lot easier. Files, documents. That's the one I want. Amazingly. Do a chat. Paste. Send. Okay, I don't know exactly when it'll come across. It's on mine, but that doesn't mean it's on yours yet. You'll see it says CCS June T. Oops, I got the wrong one. Ooh, ignore that one. Did I grab the wrong one? I might have.
You did tips and tricks.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Ignore that one, like I said. Let's see here. That's the one I want. Let's try this again.
So anyway, Tim, while you were telling us about the utilities that talk to you about your hardware, I got them installed on my 2 different machines. And yeah, they work very much the same way some things do in Windows. And I've been looking for stuff like this in Linux.
Yeah, I was too, so it was great when I came across it. And this is from my more FYIs. Okay, June Linux SIG meeting is the one. It shows a green button with a down pointing arrow. Click on that, and it should download to your system an RTF file. I've been using that, and with reason. I'm gonna stop on that there, and I'm going to bring up, there are several pieces of software that I have been installing on Linux with reason, I guess is the best way for me to state it. And I'm going to get back into sharing screen. And there, minimize you, minimize, I'm going to close that to heck with it. Get out of that. Get, oh, I know why. Cancel. Never mind. Sorry about that. Close without saving. Jeez. Anyway, one of them that I load in, and this is ancient piece of software, but it has a parallel in Windows. This is called AbiWord, and this is the material I just sent you in that chat document that I had to download. Generally speaking, AbiWord is the equivalent of the old version of WordPad in Windows, but it does not handle images like the current WordPad in Windows. But it gives you the ability to have hyperlinks. I can change the color of for highlighting colors. I can change the color of my text if I want to. It gives you basically a low end, low resource word processor. And for some things that I have to do, I have to have the low end either text or RTF processor, because any kind of a regular word processor like our LibreOffice writer and Word in Windows, they put in a lot of hidden characters. And in certain circumstances, if you copy from that document into something else, you may get results you not only didn't expect, but you don't want. The simpler program gives you the ability to have cleaner text. Now, in that's AbiWord. Another one is this is a plain text editor that's probably the equivalent of Notepad with one difference. I can have multi tabs. Notepad doesn't have that. So it's something. There is another one that comes with Xubuntu, XFCE desktop, excuse me. XFCE desktop has one called Mousepad. I like that one even better. So that's another piece of software. Another piece of software I have on my systems is, I don't think there's anything I can show you there. No, I can't. It's called Redshift. And oops. Redshift I have loaded into the system. If it comes on some Linux distros, but not all of them. And I think it's in the software manager, so you should be able to download it. Once you run it, it should ask you for your zip code. And what it does is it adjusts your screen temperature, reducing blue light that can mess up your sleep at night uh, by replacing it with a reddish tint that gets darker and darker as it goes along. Another one that I always download from the software manager is BleachBit. It's a cleanup program and it's excellent. It also works in Windows, but in certain versions of Linux, outside of Debian-based ones, it does not have the APT cleanup selections. So if I put this in an RPM distro or Arch distro, Windows, that's not going to be there, but all the other stuff, you have to, it will, for every line that's in there, it gives you a corresponding what this feature is and whether you want to maybe turn it on or off. Everything you check off, you then click preview. Preview goes through to find out what's there. It's doing an analysis by and large. When it's done with the analysis at the bottom, and there's a progress bar at the top of the right-hand column, when it's all done, then you hit clean, and the clean button will actually go through and remove as much of the stuff as possible. Sometimes it's a tad less, sometimes it's a tad more than what it thinks from the preview that it's going to remove from your system. Excellent tool. Another one is Stacer. This is not always available on everything, but it's so far been available on all Debian base that I have played with. It may not be available on others. It's not available on Windows, but I can show you Stacer if you've never seen it before. This is the program. It gives you lots of features here. It tells you, this is my system right now. The CPU is at 58, 60 some percent. I'm using up about half of my memory. I'm about 14 gigabytes out of 29 gigabytes of storage used up. I can go to here. Since I have Redshift, normally this comes up with a red button. I turn this on so that it's a startup app when you boot up the computer. Cleanup. You come to cleanup here. You select all here at the bottom. They all get a green button. You hit the magnifying glass and it says, this is how much trash I've found in each section. I come over here to the left side, select all, and do that, and it asks for the password. Remember, anytime you're changing something on the system, it's going to ask for the password. And it cleaned it all up. There are other features you can explore, and this one here looks interesting. Be careful with it. You may find that you're turning off something that you want on. If it's red, it's off under that circumstance, and that's running now. So if it's green under this column here, it's running. If it's red, it's not running. Here is a startup at boot, and it's got most everything green. But a lot of them, it determines, are not needed at a certain point during the boot up process, and it turns them off. when they're not really going to be needed. There may be additional ones you want to have turned off in a running state because you're not needing and using them. You just have to remember it. Here's your processes. This is another way of seeing them. Packages you have. Performance. How's your CPU doing? How's your CPU load averages? And remember, I've only got 2 CPUs, so there's only 2 lines up here. If you have hyper-threading, you will see more lines than the real cores. Come down here to tools. This is host management. This gets into your networking and stuff like that. Most of us aren't going to mess with it. Trust me, even I don't usually mess with it. APT repositories, you can turn them on and off. You can add repositories if you know the addresses needed for them. The last one down here is some settings. They're both red when you first install it. This one I turn on so that when I X out, it goes away. If that's left red, it's going to say, do you really want to quit the program? And then you have to click yes. So that gets rid of an annoyance. I've already mentioned about CPU X. Hang on a minute. And I'm playing with a few other things that I'll get to in the future, but one other one that I do put on the system is called Catfish. Catfish is a general search program. On Windows, I use everything more than the built-in search feature. And the reason I do that is because the built-in search feature to Windows is slow. Everything is lightning fast. This one here is not bad, but it doesn't do as good a job as everything. So these are some pieces of software that I thought I should mention to you folks. The one other last thing that I want to discuss, and there's a reason for it. And this will be the last thing that I play with tonight, since we're running OT. Synaptics Package Manager, and Bob has good experience with this. I've used it some when I have to, otherwise I don't. Anytime you launch it, click the reload button. This is doing the equivalent of sudo app update. That puts this package manager in sync with what you have available, and it will know what you have on your system. The next thing you can do is hit the applied button. This one is not showing that it's live right now. It's not as dark, it's grayed out. On some systems, it does show up live. Click the apply button, and it will mark any updates that it finds out here on the Synaptics package, and it will install them. But the main thing is to come over here to the search. Now, when I first did Nala, I did it through the Synaptics package. So I stuck in Nala and I hit enter. And it says, I found one. And I put a check mark here. It's normally a blank box like this one up above it. And if you put the check mark in there, it says mark for installation. I'm not going to do that for that. That's what I did, and it turns green after that, meaning this is an installed package already. It also is telling you it will download 0.11.1 version. And I've already given you information how to upgrade to 0.13.0. So these are some of the things, tools. Sometimes they work perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden something isn't working quite right. And so I'm bringing you alternatives to be able to get things done when the normal things don't seem to work right. And knowing the command line is very important, because bottom line, I've had many instances where software manager didn't have the software. App install or Synaptics package manager were the only two options. At least Synaptics package manager is graphical in nature, but I'm not one of these that's afraid of the terminal. So I also use that very heavily, especially now that I found the Nala application. I just am hoping down the line it's going to support snap and flat packages. I don't know whether they'll do app image or not. And hopefully somebody will create a graphical user interface to make it more user friendly. That's what the graphical interface is all about to begin with. So these are many of the things that I thought of in a continuance of last month's meeting and what we covered. And these are some of the things that I put on my systems to be able to get a lot of things done. And a lot of the stuff comes from either my more FYI research to create them with articles, and or I came across a problem or an annoyance or something like that, and I start doing research, like on the low end systems, being able to control my CPU frequency. If that CPU frequency works, fantastic. If you want to go into chat, open it up, and down at the bottom, very bottom line, you'll see three little tiny dots. If you click on those three little horizontal dots, you'll get an option to save the chat, just in case you want additional information that was put into the chat. All right. Anybody got any questions or comments? Bob?
There is an additional advantage of Synaptic Package Manager. Let me just briefly share so that I can show you. Let me
It's your
get the whole.
bedtime. Don't forget.
I know. This is going to be really quick. Now, you can see that I've got Synaptic Package Manager open.
Right.
And I've got it on status. And File, you can save your markings. And that allows you to export the markings for most of what you've got installed on your system. And it'll come down in about 3 or 4 different sections.
Okay.
It'll be whatever was installed, certain special installs that you did, and it'll also list what's not installed. Then if you want to reinstall your system, or if you want to move your software into a new system, you've got a tremendous head start.
Right. That's a good tip too.
It can both save and read markings.
Anybody else got any questions or comments?
Yeah, I ran into a thing called disk usage analyzer. Let me show you what that looks like. If I can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. Disk usage analyzer.
Wait a minute. You may have it up, but you're not sharing the screen.
Oh, I tried to share. Oh, here we go. How about that?
That varies, I think, individual to individual. In some ways, it's can be a useful tool at times, but at times it doesn't do anything for me.
Well, it just shows that I've got practically all of it used with time shift.
Yes, timeshare is a hog.
Yeah, so
It's
need to.
best to put timeshare on a USB drive,
Right.
Yeah,
and
Just put it on some other drive, not your system
right.
drive.
right,
Yeah.
putting it on your live drive is really the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
And,
That's like trying to put Macrim Reflect backups onto
Yeah.
your system drive. If your system drive crashes, the last thing in the world you want is for your backups to be there.
Yeah.
that's right. And it'll make reinstalling your backup image a nightmare
Yeah.
from Elm Street.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's where you're going to want a gamer's high-end gaming system that costs you $3,000 to $10,000.
Or just get a system like I have that just has 2 internal SSDs. But then again, if something happens to the entire computer,
Like
both of those drives are
ransomware,
going to go out.
like
What?
ransomware. The one,
Or a surge.
well, yeah, but I mean, ransomware is
That
usually
too.
the worst one. But we have one little proviso on ransomware, and that is, except for those getting into cyber crime, might attack you, maybe by accident, and or maybe they know you, and they want to give you aggravation. But generally speaking, ransomware goes where the gold is, and that's companies and their databases. Why? If you use any companies, you are giving them your information. If you use any government agencies, you are giving them your personal information. A cyber criminal wants to go for the gold, not for a tin. So it used to be ransomware hit individuals. They got sophisticated in how to crack things, and then they moved on to companies and government agencies. Uh, don't know what to tell you how to get around it because bottom line, we all do business with government and businesses, and when they get hacked, a lot of times that's your personal information, and that's how they sell that on the dark net to make money. Most of them that do the hacking don't use the information themselves. They're not that dumb. And what they do is they sell it in chunks on the dark net. They make money off of it and let some other idiot use it to hack into your accounts where they might end up getting, not being sophisticated enough, they get discovered who they are, and they have U.S. Marshals knocking on their door to put them under arrest and seize all their computing equipment. And you're not going to see that equipment again. Guarantee it. So, generally speaking, it's moved away from the individual, thank God, but at the same time, it still affects every one of us. And there's no way around it that I can think of.
So,
Anything
guys, I
else?
want to thank you for a great meeting tonight. Very interesting. I don't
Yeah.
understand most of it, but I got your notes.
Now, wait a minute. What do you mean you didn't
I'm a
understand most of it?
novice. I'm still learning this stuff.
Everybody's a novice no matter how many years you've been playing with it because they
Always
constantly
something
keep
new.
changing the landscape. It's like the moon and all the asteroids and comets that have struck it. Does it look the same as it did when it first formed? No. Neither is
The
Earth.
only
Earth,
constant in this world is change.
yeah. all in constant
Thank God.
change. When it stops changing, that's an abandoned software because nobody's supporting it anymore. Nobody's making any changes, no bug fixes, no security patches, whatever may be required. So
Yeah, I wasn't complaining. I was thanking you. It
I
gives me
understand.
information to work on.
I'm just adding to what you were bringing up there.
Yeah.
I found
Okay.
an old mouse pad today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
somewhere around the house I've got old ones. You got the Sears one. That's
Yeah.
yeah. Your camera blurs it a lot. There you are.
There.
I think I got one of those with my IBM Junior that I bought from Sears.
Oh,
I've
it
got
came
another
with the
meeting I got to
computer.
run.
The desktop
Take
one
care.
that they gave us when we had Lotus Notes in
Yeah.
OS2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Talk to Sanford about us too.
Sanford was a real aficionado with OS2. He really loved that.
Yeah, now he's doing Windows Home Server.
Well, OS2 still exists, but I don't know that anybody really wants it. At any rate, I'm gonna end the meeting, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
2006.
2006.
Mine's still older.
Yeah.
All right. All
Hey,
right.
sooner or later that same calendar will be usable again.
Yeah, they come around.
Yep.
Okay. I'm
All
getting
right.
tired.
Everybody have a good night. Good luck.
I'm going to
You'll
say
need it.
aloha.